Having emerged victorious over his adversaries, our protagonist stands triumphantly beside the defeated bullies. Reflecting on his recent experiences, he has gained insight into two entirely new concepts. Firstly, the revelation that the status window is accessible solely to those who have undergone the awakening process. Secondly, this window offers information about the awakened individuals but withholds certain details. This newfound knowledge underscores that the status window is exclusive to the awakened and provides only partial information, leaving much of his essence veiled in secrecy. The screen in front of him presents his name and details about his abilities. One of his special skills, labeled as Predation with a rank of E, allows him to target and hunt his desired prey, requiring 5 points of his mana. Another skill, the Stone skill, also ranked E, fortifies his body like stone, utilizing only 1 point of his mana. Additionally, he discovered that up until this moment, there was no shortage of mana, yet the Predation skill remained inactive. In simpler terms, apart from mana availability as described, there seem to be other influencing factors preventing its activation. Yet, there exist passive effects that, despite not being explicitly outlined in the description, possess the ability to resist and nullify skills associated with abnormal conditions, like poisoning or bleeding. Deep in contemplation, he reached the realization that his thoughts regarding his skills consistently align with the actual functionality and nature of those abilities. Upon witnessing the state of the bullies, our protagonist is startled and bewildered to find his cousin kneeling with bowed head in front of him. Unable to fathom the sudden submissive behavior of his cousin, he is left perplexed and puzzled by the unexpected change. Upon witnessing the admirable side of our protagonist, his cousin implores for forgiveness and pledges to introspect on his wrongful actions committed alongside the bullies. His cousin claims to do whatever you want, even if you want me to lick your shoes I will do. However, our protagonist discerns that this display from his cousin is merely an act. He perceives his cousin as cunning and astute, akin to a fox. He understands that the sole intention behind his cousin's actions is to safeguard himself from the consequences, rather than genuine remorse or reflection. However, the primary concern for our protagonist at the moment is not to managing the situation with his cousin. He is preoccupied with pressing matters that urgently require his attention, causing him considerable worry and distress. Based on his past knowledge, today marks the day when the calamity is predicted to strike the earth for the very first time. Our protagonist chose not to dwell on his cunning cousin's actions. Instead, he promptly forgave him for his misdeeds, a gesture that left his cousin bewildered, unable to comprehend how he could be forgiven so readily. True to his nature, our protagonist didn't let his cousin off lightly. In return for forgiveness, he asked his cousin to fulfill a request, leaving his cousin stunned and surprised by the unexpected turn of events. The scene transitioned to the abandoned factory, a location previously sealed off by government officials. 3 individuals stand beside the dungeon portal, where a monstrous entity attempts to emerge. This phenomenon, referred to as a gate break, signifies the sudden opening of a path to the abyss. If left unaddressed, it could lead to a dungeon disaster. The occurrence of this gate break takes the team by surprise. One of the team members remarks that it has been a decade since the last dungeon break happened. The sudden creation of the gate has caused a swarm of monsters to converge, eagerly awaiting the chance to break free and unleash themselves upon the world. Upon observing the gate, the remaining 2 members also grew concerned. They realized that if they failed to take action regarding this dungeon, the emergence of a monster could lead to catastrophic consequences. Recognizing the weight of their responsibilities, the woman with red hair proposed evacuating the surrounding areas as a measure to minimize potential damages and ensure the safety of the vicinity. However, their boss swiftly dismissed the suggestion of evacuation, exuding immense confidence in his own skill called Barrier, which stands at level B. He assured them that this ability was capable of restraining the monsters from breaking through the barrier and emerging into the surrounding area. The team leader clarified that the monsters present within this dungeon were only of rank C level. He emphasized that it was practically impossible for these creatures to break free from his barrier skill, further solidifying his confidence in the containment of the situation. To his utter surprise, the monster suddenly breaks free, causing a wave of panic among both women who had been addressing their team leader. They find themselves overwhelmed by a sense of despair as the situation takes an unexpected turn. Prepared for the attack, their team leader swiftly countered as a powerful monster lunged towards him. His well-aimed kick sent the creature's head flying, eliciting a gush of purplish blood from its body. With confidence, the team leader acknowledged his own abilities as a B-ranker, stating their competence in dealing with these formidable monsters. Meanwhile, our protagonist rushes in haste, eager to reach the scene of a dungeon break, accompanied by his cousin, who fails to comprehend the urgency. The cousin remains puzzled as to why they are in such a hurry to arrive at the site of the dungeon break, especially when government officials are expected to be present, managing the situation. Surprisingly, our protagonist explains that the initial assessment of this gate break is estimated at a C rank level. However, the personnel in control are at a higher B rank level, indicating that there shouldn't be any issues or concerns arising from the situation. Upon hearing the protagonist's explanation, his cousin expresses frustration, claiming that this was what he had been saying all along, giving an exasperated expression. However, he suddenly realizes that the situation would only be manageable if both the dungeon break and the emerging monster are indeed at a rank C level. This revelation dawns upon him as he mentally processes the information, visibly struck by the realization, perhaps hitting his head in frustration or contemplation. Following the defeat of the low-rank monsters, the man wearing glasses pondered over how these seemingly inferior creatures managed to breach his barrier. This realization struck him with panic as he comprehended that the overflowing mana emanating from the gate surpassed his own abilities. This revelation caused a sense of alarm, understanding that the mana being emitted was of a higher caliber than his own, leading to a state of urgency and concern. The two ladies urgently alerted their team leader that a more dangerous creature was emerging from the gate. To their astonishment, a creature of significantly greater power than the previous monsters emerged from the gate, leaving the team leader and the entire team taken aback. They found themselves at a loss, pondering how to confront and fight against these immensely powerful monsters. The menacing creature that emerged from the gate outbreak was the giant ogre, ranked at a level, boasting incomprehensible power compared to the C-rank monsters they had previously encountered. The sight of the creature made the team leader perspire profusely as he contemplated its potential rank, realizing it was far beyond a C-rank entity. His shock escalated as he discovered that this monster wasn't a B-rank, but in fact, an A-rank entity. Suddenly, a massive blast erupted, obliterating the entire factory in an instant. While running, his cousin inquired how he knew all this information. Unbeknownst to his cousin, our protagonist harbored a secret. He hailed from the future and had experienced similar situations in a previous life. This revelation didn't come as much of a surprise to our protagonist, given his unique background and experiences. To respond to his cousin's curiosity, our protagonist simply stated that his intuition guided him, leaving his cousin perplexed. This response led his cousin to believe that our protagonist was merely lying to him, further adding to the confusion of our protagonist. Both our protagonist and his cousin were startled and astounded to see a group of people rushing toward them, pursued by relentless monsters. The individuals were shouting desperately for help as they fled from the monsters hot on their heels. Our protagonist urgently addressed his panicked cousin, whose face had turned pale witnessing the monster chasing the people. He urged his cousin to quickly flee from the area, emphasizing the importance of remembering his words. However, his cousin's demeanor underwent a sudden shift, displaying loyalty as a steadfast companion who was unwilling to leave their comrade behind. However, our protagonist reassured his cousin, alleviating concerns about both their safety. Taking a step forward, our protagonist activated his stone skill, signifying his readiness to engage in battle with the monsters, displaying a fearless determination. In the heart of the city stands a grand and robust building, where an individual gazes out of a window, contemplating the swift resolution of the escalating situation. However, the primary issue they face is the lack of reinforcements to address the gate of A rank, which they initially perceived as a mere C rank threat. The sole viable solution to confront the A rank gatebreak is to entrust the task of defeating the monsters to A rank awakened individuals. He pivoted to face an individual standing directly behind him and urgently requested assistance in this critical situation, recognizing their status as an A rank awakened individual. The individual, known as Ahn Hyunsu, an awakened player with an A-rank status and renowned for the special skill Blade of Lunacy, was overwhelmed with tears of joy. He is granted the opportunity to be humanity's savior, rescuing people from the clutches of cruel monsters. The scene transitions to our protagonist effortlessly dispatching monsters with a single punch, harnessing the formidable might of his stone skill to swiftly eliminate the adversaries. Furthermore, after defeating the monster, our protagonist utilizes his predation skill to absorb the mana reserves from the creature's remains. This absorption enhances his own power, making him even more formidable and potent. Upon employing his predation skill, our protagonist uncovers a new secret about its functionality. If his fatigue surpasses 70%, he becomes incapable of activating the predation skill. This realization highlights a crucial aspect. While most skills are activated using mana, it's imperative to note that managing fatigue is equally critical, signifying that concerns shouldn't be limited solely to mana. Additionally, our protagonist discovered a crucial aspect to consider. Fatigue plays a pivotal role when utilizing his skills. As his fatigue escalates, the potency of his skills diminishes gradually. This realization underscores the delicate balance he must maintain, as excessive fatigue could significantly reduce the power and effectiveness of his abilities over time. Managing his stamina becomes integral to optimizing the potential of his skills while combating the monsters threatening humanity. Continuously absorbing the deceased monster allows his mana to auto-regenerate without expending any mana points, unlike the usual 5 mana points required for activating his predation skill repeatedly. This revelation brings a smile to our protagonist's face, as if stumbling upon an unexpected treasure amidst his endeavors. After successfully preying on the monster using his predation skill, our protagonist receives a notification stating that both his stone skill and predation skill have been upgraded to rank E. This revelation fills our protagonist with even greater excitement, realizing that the more he utilizes his primary skills, the more his power amplifies and grows. As our protagonist contemplates his rapid progress, he realizes that at this rate, he could easily ascend to the level of an S rank or even an SS rank awakened. However, a sudden realization dawns upon him: the capabilities of his skills far surpass those of typical S or SS rank awakened individuals. This revelation leads him to acknowledge that he might have the potential to become the world's first SSS rank awakened, a feat that no one managed to achieve in his past life. Having grasped the full potential of his predation skill, our protagonist feels an urgent need to swiftly return to Huangji. However, to his surprise, he hears the voice of someone charging toward a giant ogre. Observing the scene, our protagonist witnesses Ahn Hyunsu, the warrior of justice, striking the monster with his sword emitting a golden aura, causing the creature to collapse to the ground. This unexpected sight leaves our protagonist utterly shocked. As the battle rages on between the monster and Ahn Hyunsu, the enraged creature retaliates by charging its fist toward the hero of justice. Simultaneously, Hyunsu prepares to counter with a deadly strike from his sword aimed at the monster. The hero successfully strikes the monster, causing it to emit a pained growl while purplish blood gushes from its body, signifying the impact and injury caused by the attack. Immediately after, an explosion occurs, utterly decimating the creature, bringing an abrupt end to its existence. Observing this incredible display of power from the A-ranked awakened, our protagonist is overwhelmed with shock. It triggers a realization, leading him to consider the possibility that this individual might be the same person who, in his past life, single-handedly obliterated an A-level monster during a previous dungeon break. Ahn Hyunsu stands atop the defeated creature, wielding his blade of lunacy emitting a radiant golden light. The sword, halfway embedded into the monster's chest, creates a striking scene that captivates our protagonist. Witnessing this, our protagonist realizes that Ahn Hyunsu is indeed as formidable and powerful as he had heard about him. Ahn Hyunsu beams a victorious smile after defeating the bloody giant ogre, savoring the triumph as though it were a satisfying feast for him. However, something about Ahn Hyunsu troubles our protagonist. Based on his past life knowledge, he knows that this battle wasn't an easy one for Ahn Hyunsu. In the past, Ahn Hyunsu had engaged in a grueling and bloody battle with a giant ogre in another part of the city. This realization raises concerns for our protagonist, hinting at a potential discrepancy or anomaly in the current situation. After vanquishing the giant monster, On Hyun-soo expresses gratitude to the citizens for enduring the ordeal. He assures them that now, with the monster defeated, they can find peace and safety once more. In a sudden turn of events, On Hyun-soo's joy dissipates as another awakened individual launches a surprise attack from behind. A dagger pierces On Hyun-soo's chest, causing blood to gush from the wound. On Hyun-soo, unable to comprehend the sudden attack and the identity of his assailant, finds himself bewildered and caught off guard. Meanwhile, the assailant, wearing a sinister smile, revels in the fulfillment of their long-awaited desire to eliminate On Hyun-soo. The protagonist's cousin stands beside the sleeping school nurse, contemplating the reason why the protagonist sent him here. He ponders the potential motives behind the protagonist's decision to send him to this location. The protagonist's cousin recalls the protagonist's warning that many people would perish that day. Among them, the school nurse, Choi Naeung, is destined to meet her end while concentrating on relief efforts instead of prioritizing evacuation. In this scenario, the protagonist reveals his plan to his cousin, instructing him to utilize his sleep skill to render people unconscious. Specifically, he is tasked with using this skill on Choi Naeung to induce sleep, enabling her safe evacuation to a secure location. The protagonist assures that he will handle the remaining challenges while ensuring the safety of others. As the cousin observes the school nurse sleeping, courtesy of the skill used to induce slumber, he contemplates how the protagonist seemed to possess foreknowledge of the unfolding events. This prompts thoughts about whether the protagonist might actually hail from the future or possess some form of prescience to be aware of these current events beforehand. Struck by a sudden realization, the cousin entertains the idea that perhaps the protagonist possesses a skill enabling him to foresee the future. This notion excites him, imagining the incredible potential it offers. The thought of being able to foresee events and possibly alter the future according to his own will makes the cousin marvel at the protagonist's incredible abilities and the possibilities he holds. The scene returns to the injured hero of justice, who demands the assailant to unveil his identity, the perpetrator responsible for the treacherous sneak attack. In response, the enemy expresses surprise at the hero's survival despite receiving an injury to a vital point. He acknowledged the remarkable resilience and endurance of A-rank players, acknowledging that their strength and stamina set them apart from others. The awakened antagonist is identified as Han Sang-do, holding a B-rank status. His possessed skill is Stealth, ranked at B. The awakened who engage in criminal activities such as senseless killings of innocent individuals are categorized as villains. Han Sang-do is identified as one of these villains, a homicidal maniac who, amidst the gate break, took pleasure in murdering innocent people purely for his own satisfaction and thrill. The protagonist is convinced, without a doubt, that he had never encountered such villains before his regression in the future timeline. The protagonist is now harboring concerns regarding whether his regression truly altered the future, leading to a sense of worry and apprehension. On Hyun-soo charged fiercely toward the villain, but abruptly halted as he sensed the presence of a monster beneath them. This sudden shift in the situation surprised both the hero and the villain, altering the course of events unexpectedly. We witness both the villain and the hero plummeting from the chest of the giant monster, positioned for an imminent attack that threatens to annihilate them all at once. Upon the fall, On Hyun-soo is incredulous, unable to comprehend how the giant ogre survived the earlier attack he had delivered. Meanwhile, the villain appears excited, witnessing the incredible regeneration ability of the monster, acknowledging it as expected from an A-rank creature. The giant ogre unleashed powerful blows towards them, narrowly evaded by both On Hyun-soo and the villain in the nick of time. However, the impact of these blows was so immense that it shattered the ground upon impact. After narrowly evading the creature's powerful attack, the villain deems it wise to leave the daunting task of confronting the invincible monster to On Hyun-soo. Shifting his attention to the protagonist observing from afar, the villain is thrilled at the prospect of causing more deaths, relishing the morbid act of licking his blade with his tongue. This sends the protagonist into a panic, sensing the villain's overwhelming killing intent emanating from him. In an intense turn of events, the villain swiftly initiated an aggressive assault, wielding a dagger aimed directly at the protagonist. The protagonist, in a surprising twist, skillfully evaded the villain's attack by utilizing a unique ability, activating a skin hardening skill that formed a protective barrier around their body. This extraordinary defense mechanism rendered the antagonist's blade ineffective, as it failed to penetrate the reinforced skin of the protagonist. Contrary to expectations, the hero swiftly retaliated with a ferocious counterattack, utilizing his leg to deliver a powerful blow that sent the villain hurtling through the air. The villain, taken aback and astonished by the sheer force of the blow delivered by the protagonist, was left reeling and stunned. This unexpected and formidable strike not only inflicted significant physical impact but also triggered a revelation within the villain. Our protagonist, who was stepping forward while addressing the lunatic, that you are the person who was going around killing the people by using the stealth skill. Filled with a surge of enthusiasm, our hero couldn't help but express a sense of fortunate coincidence upon encountering the antagonist. Fate has smiled upon me to cross paths with you, the hero exclaimed. During the intense clash, the protagonist fully engaged in a fierce battle, exchanging numerous blows with the villain without a hint of retreat. Both adversaries relentlessly faced each other, displaying unwavering determination in their fight against one another. In this relentless confrontation, neither the protagonist nor the antagonist showed any inclination to step back, demonstrating their unyielding resolve to prevail in the ongoing conflict. In response to the intense encounter, the villain asserted his prowess as a skilled fighter, attributing his confidence during the confrontation to his expertise in combat. In a split scenario, Hyun-soo grapples with a colossal ogre, while simultaneously, our protagonist engages in combat against the villain. During their confrontation, the villain makes a pointed assertion, suggesting that the protagonist's perceived advantage over him is solely attributed to possessing the stone skill. However, be aware that the world doesn't always follow your intentions, cautioned the antagonist. Immediately afterward, he activated his stealth abilities and disappeared from his standing position. The villain suddenly materialized directly behind the protagonist, leaving our hero completely stunned and taken aback by the unexpected appearance. As the protagonist processed the shock of the attack, he noticed his hand was bleeding, indicating that the villain's strike had managed to penetrate through his stone skill. This unexpected breach left the protagonist astonished, questioning how the adversary's assault was able to overcome his supposedly impenetrable defense. The villain relentlessly launched a series of attacks on our protagonist, who struggled to defend himself and prevent potentially severe injuries. With a defensive stance, the protagonist fought hard to shield himself from the onslaught, warding off the strikes aimed at inflicting critical harm. Despite the ferocity of the villain's assault, the protagonist skillfully maintained a defensive posture, striving to minimize the risk of sustaining life-threatening injuries during the intense confrontation. The villain, taunting the protagonist, delivered a grim message: remember, every skill has its weakness. Once exposed, it paves the way for your opponent's victory. This ominous warning hinted at the vulnerability inherent in revealing one's skills or abilities, suggesting that once an adversary identifies the weaknesses, it could ultimately lead to the protagonist's downfall in the imminent struggle. In a devastating turn of events, the protagonist suffered a complete and overwhelming defeat, leaving him incapacitated and gravely wounded. Overpowered by the adversary, the protagonist lay defeated, blood seeping from his wounds, signaling the extent of his loss in the fierce confrontation. Despite being thoroughly beaten and battered, the protagonist continued to stand firm against the villain, contemplating the unexpected flaw within his stone skin ability. Reflecting on the surprising revelation that the stone skill wasn't impervious to attacks, the protagonist realized that while the skill could initially block assaults, an unbearable shock could shatter his stone defense. Additionally, the crushed section would regenerate with stone, but this newly formed layer possessed significantly lower durability, leaving the protagonist vulnerable to further harm. This realization dawned upon the hero, highlighting the limitations and risks associated with relying solely on his stone skin ability for protection in combat. Additionally, he suddenly grasped that the adversary had been deliberately targeting his stone skill since the beginning of the battle. However, the protagonist wore a timid smile, realizing that he had been testing his physical combat skills to explore and uncover additional abilities within himself. The sight of the protagonist smiling despite sustaining severe injuries left the villain completely stunned and bewildered. The protagonist activated his predation skill with the primary intention of engaging the villain in a battle to acquire and steal his skills. A crimson aura emanated from the protagonist, signaling his complete readiness and determination to prey upon the desired target's abilities. This display indicated the protagonist's firm resolve to engage in a strategic confrontation aimed at obtaining the antagonist's skills through his unique predation ability. Upon witnessing the skill of the protagonist, the villain was taken aback, utterly surprised and puzzled by the incredible and malevolent mana displayed. The antagonist realized that this was the formidable power the protagonist had concealed from the very beginning. However, the villain seemed unfazed and disregarded any potential risks. He impulsively lunged towards the protagonist without considering the possibility of falling into a trap that the protagonist might have set up for him. Calmly, the protagonist countered, stating, "You claim that every skill has its weaknesses, so there must be a weakness in your skill as well." This assertion hinted at the possibility of a vulnerability within the antagonist's abilities, aiming to challenge the villain's confidence and provoke a reassessment of his own strengths and weaknesses. After devouring numerous monsters multiple times, he came to the realization that many of these creatures attempted to escape his predation skill. However, ultimately, regardless of their attempts to flee, his predation skill consumed each of them without fail. He conveyed confidently, "There's nowhere you could possibly hide, no matter where you run, my predation skill will find you. You can't escape it." This declaration emphasized the relentless and inescapable nature of his predation skill, asserting that no hiding place or attempt to flee would evade its reach. Following the confrontation, the rising sun illuminated the horizon, casting its light upon the world and bringing forth a new sense of hope among the person who had faced a harrowing night. Despite the challenging situation, this morning holds a glimmer of hope for Hyun-soo, who finds himself defeated and incapacitated in front of a colossal monster, unable to move. The monster charged toward the defeated hero, aiming to deliver the final, fatal blow. However, the creature was left bewildered and astounded when it found Hyun-soo magically disappearing from the scene, evading the impending strike and leaving the monster confounded by his sudden disappearance. After employing the stealth skill to evade the monster's attack, the hero of justice found himself in a more comfortable situation, enjoying the sense of ease that comes with being unnoticed while no one was watching him. This newfound tranquility allowed him to relax and move freely without the pressure of being observed or under threat, granting him a moment of respite and comfort after the intense encounter.